right, welcome back everybody. In this video, what we're going to be doing is looking at setting up our MCP server along with our bear token and putting in the appropriate credentials that we need on the client side to make certain that everything is communicating once we put that bear token in. This is part 2 of our series. I did break this part 2 up into a few different videos simply because there's a lot to cover and the one video was getting kind of long. So part 2 is just going to be part 2, A, B, and C. It's all about the MCP server getting set up on the n8n side of the house, and so that's why I have it broken up, just to keep from having one incredibly long video. So with that being said, what we're going to be looking at in this video, initially right off the bat, we are going to go into n8n and set up our credential for our bear token that we'll ultimately use inside of our MCP server. Once we've completed that, then what we're going to do is step into actually setting up and creating the MCP server and bringing in that bear token as well. And then finally, we will look at setting up the information that we need on the client with the .env variables that we'll be looking at in our TypeScript code. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump right in and take a look over at generating the bear token credentials inside of n8n. All right, so most of us, when we jump right into n8n, we pretty much go for a new workflow, and ultimately we will be doing that for our MCP server as well. But what I want to do instead for this initial conversation about putting the MCP server together is I want to come over to credentials. Now here, in my opinion, everything you do with n8n should have credentials buried in because, you know, more security is always better. But regardless, in this one, we're definitely going to be paying attention to it. Now here, once we're on credentials, we'll see that our option over here changes to create credential. So go ahead and click on that. And in this search for what type of credential you're actually going to create, you're going to type in, you can pretty much just type in bear, and you're going to get a bear auth, right? So your bear token and everything else. Don't worry about this banner bear for the time being. The bear auth is what we're going to be using. So go ahead, click on that, and then select continue. Now here, there's two things that we need to pay attention to. Well, you know what? I take that back. There's three things we need to pay attention to. The first is the name, right? So whatever you're doing, right? Foo, bear, auth, whatever you want to do, it doesn't matter. Kind of missed my selection there, but whatever. Now, you may be looking at this and going, okay, well, where do I get this bear token from? Well, all we need to actually do from our terminal, let me just go ahead and clear this so we can just kind of get up to the top. From our terminal, what we're going to do is just use our OpenSSL command. Now, this is pretty much standard on most Mac, Unix, and if you have a Linux terminal, PowerShell, you're going to be able to get something at least similar to this. But here, we're just going to use OpenSSL. We're going to use the random number generator, if you will. And we're going to use the base 64, 3 or 32 characters out. Now, this is just a command that you run and hit return. You're going to get this, and you can always tell that you have something accurate because you get this trailing equal sign. And all we're going to do here is copy this. I am literally just doing Command C. On obviously Windows, you do Control C. I'm going to paste it here. And so now I have a new credential named, in this case, foo bear auth. And I have a bear token. Now, here, allow HTTP request domains. You got to understand if you're really wanting somebody who doesn't have a security certificate to access your MCP server, and maybe you do, right? Maybe you're developing something internally, kind of goes against, zero trust, but maybe you are within a firewall that you say, okay, everything in here has an HTTP, and maybe you leave this to all. But putting something out I typically just say none, right? So if you are a endpoint that does not have an HTTPS, you're pretty much out, right? Any HTTP is out. So I say none. There are no HTTP URLs allowed. And so now we have a credential set up, and all we need to do now is save it, and we will use this credential later when we actually go ahead and start configuring our MCP server. But this really is step one. So go ahead, make certain that you have this, and that'll make the next few steps much, much easier. And it will ultimately make your MCP server much more secure. All right, so we took a look. We saw how to set up the credentials for the bear token, right? We went in and looked at the OpenSSL commands, things along those lines. So that's all set up. Now, what we're going to do is we are now going to set up our MCP server, ingest those credentials that we have for our bear token, and then immediately after that, we will look at what we need to set up on our client side, in this case, using our .env variables. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into that as well. All right, so here we are looking at our n8n dashboard. Don't have any projects set up in this folder, right? And that's what this is, video MCP test. It's just a folder. Obviously I got my projects and then the folder here. So we're gonna go ahead, we're going to create a workflow. And for our workflow, we're gonna just type in MCP. You'll see the MCP server trigger. Go ahead and select that and you'll be presented with the configuration UI for that. Now, here in the authentication, it says none by default. I highly recommend you do not leave it as none. Now, we're gonna go and bring in the bear auth. And when we select that, we'll notice that our credential populates pretty much automatically. Now, this is the credential we created earlier in the video. So whatever you named yours, right? It could be foo, it could be bar, it could be ABC, it could be XYZ, 1, 2, 3, whatever it is. That's what's going to populate here. I just incidentally named my credential, my bear auth account. That's pretty much it, right? So right off the bat, we have our MCP server and we have, at least the bare minimum amount of security in place here. Now, the one thing, it's just an n8n thing. Come down into settings. When you come into settings, you can see the instance level MCP. Go ahead and select that and then make certain that it is enabled, right? So later on, you're gonna want, your ChatGPT, your Claude, your Gemini, whatever it is, any number of clients, you're gonna want them to be able to connect to your MCP, right? And so make certain that instance level MCP is turned on. Plus, this allows the MCP to, kind of dig down into some of the workflows within, or even some of the nodes within your workflows, things along those lines. So just make certain that that's enabled. Kind of annoying that you got to go through settings. It'd be nice, if in the MCP UI, you just had a section over here, settings. Could be a hamburger or a meatball option to, pop in and out and just have the settings that you need. It'd be infinitely more convenient. So if anyone out there from n8n is watching, give me a break. Just put the settings that we need here so it's a little bit easier for everybody, but whatever. I'll get off my high horse now. So there is our MCP server. Now, you'll also probably want to make certain that your MCP server has a reasonable name. So I'll just do, if I have a YouTube, this is my MCP, SVR, whatever. And then we're off to the races, right? So now I have my MCP server. Now, the thing about it here is now that I have my MCP server locked down with a bear token, I'm going to need to make certain that in my client, I account for that and pass that information in. So let's go ahead and we'll pull up the actual project now so we can take a look at how we do that. All right, so we're here at our project. I'll pull that down a little bit just so we can kind of see everything. And we spoke earlier about our .env file, and I still don't have anything on our .env file yet, but what I'm going to do for this project is I'm going to put in a file that we have called .env.example. And the reason that I'm doing this in the .env.example is because when I put in all this information in this project, All of the information in the .env.example will be committed into the repo that you guys have access to. So you'll be able to use this as just kind of your starting point, right? So that's why I'm putting it in here. Now, what we're going to want to do is we're going to need a few certain elements in here. And one of them is we're going to call it the MCP endpoint, and it's going to equal HTTPS whatever, right? So it could be foo, what is it, n8n or app n8n? App n8n. I think it's .cloud. Yes. Okay. So this is going to be your URL to your endpoint, right? Obviously mine is grayed out, but you know, you're going to have some URL up here, right? It's going to have this GUID. Obviously, I'm going to delete this GUID after I make this video, but that's what you're going to be putting into your endpoint right here, right? You're going to have your HTTPS, whatever your n8n account is. Now, we're also going to put in an MCP, put it in bear token. Now this is going to be whatever token you had earlier. It's going to depend on what that command brings back. So I'll just, for a real quick refresher, I'm just going to create a new one. All right. So again, just kind of as a refresher, right here at the command line. So open SSL, right? We're going to want the random bear token. We're going to do the base 64 once again, and then we're going to have 32 bytes. So we're going to go ahead, hit return. We know it's good because it has that trailing equal sign. So I'm just going to select this. Just FYI, in case somebody out there is like, oh, I got them. This isn't the actual one I use, but regardless, it'll be in the repo. Don't copy this one and use it in yours. It's obviously a compromised key or token, but it's just a good reference for you. So here you'll be able to see this now in the repo, and we have our endpoint, which is the URL into our MCP server, as well as the bear token that we're going to use for the authentication, right? So you can take the .env.example and you can just change it to .env, but make certain that you do not use this key because everybody out on the internet now has it. So keep that in mind. But regardless, it will go up into the repo. So with that, we'll go ahead and move on from here and start setting up some of our other elements that we're going to call from our MCP server next. All right. So we got to see where everything was, kind of taking place, where, things needed to get aligned between our MCP and our client. And one thing, or a couple things I want to just mention really quick is the actual URL inside of your MCP server. It needs to include the GUID at the end. I didn't put that into the initial video for that, but I just wanted to make certain that everybody understood that your URL for your MCP servers is going to include that GUID. So I just wanted to put that out there because it wasn't in the actual exercise part of the video. And then finally, I know I went a little bit back and forth just in the nature of making these videos. Some things in your terminal will get cleared out, whatever. But for the bear tokens, just to put it out there, the bear token that you have set up inside your MCP inside of n8n needs to be the same bear token that you put into your .env file on your client. I just wanted to kind of put that out there because in the video it might have gone a little bit back and forth. So I just wanted to put that out there for clarity. So anyways, with that being said, as before, make certain that you go into the GitHub account and you'll see the TypeScript in there. But anyways, everything is going to be on this GitHub URL. So with that being said, I will see you in the next section of part 2, where we will actually go in and start creating some of the other workflows that our MCP server is going to actually ingest for functionality. All right.